Hello, my friend, and welcome. I'm Daryl Urbanski, and today I have something special for you. What you're about to hear today isn't part of what we usually do. Today, I'd like to spend some personal time with you and for us to get to know each other better. So, to start, I'll be sharing some of my life stories with you, plus introducing you to some of the grandfathers of my business acumen. In fact, the next few weeks, I'll be introducing you to the grandfathers of my education, plus you're going to get select never-released recordings of people interviewing me where I give some of my best business and life advice ever. We all learn from various people we know for various amounts of time. Some people we share just a single impactful moment together. Others, a full weekend. And some of us have people in our lives who have always been there, always guiding us, and always sharing our paths. Well, I would like to share some of these people who've guided me with you. Your life really can change based on the things you learn and the people you meet. So please enjoy this special series of classic and never released recordings in this 10-part interview series. Enjoy.
Welcome to the My Future Business podcast. I'm here today with Daryl Urbanski. Is that how you pronounce it, Daryl?
That's right, you got it.
Fantastic. First time around has that. Daryl's the founder and president of bestbusinesscoach.ca, and that's best known for their ability to create, well, actually, he's best known for his ability to create seven-figure automated income streams from scratch. Daryl, tell us a little bit about that. What's that all about?
Sure. Well, yeah. Essentially, so if I were in, so I'm an entrepreneur and a marketer. Everyone who's in business, it's at some point, way, shape, and form, a marketer or a salesperson, because that's kind of the nature of business in a lot of ways. So, but if I were at any sort of business conference or marketing conference, I would introduce myself as a direct response database marketing automator. So I use a lot of tools, that marketing automation tools, essentially, and I mentioned the word database marketing. And so part of what that is taking the leads you have and sifting, sorting, and screening them to put them into automated processes which follow up, which remind salespeople, which do all those sorts of things, which to help make sure that the business is working. So it's really the quintessential idea of working on your business versus in your business.
Righto. Okay. Are we talking about software such as the likes of Infusionsoft and Entreports and things like that, or is this something completely different than that?
No, you hit the nail on the head. In fact, I think kind of one of the most silent but powerful innovations in the business arena, at least recently, was the autoresponder. Because prior to that, everything had to be a manual process. Prior to an autoresponder, and for the listeners that are listening in, just to clarify, for some people an autoresponder is, I email you, but you're on vacation, so it spits an email back saying, hey, I'll be back in a week. And that's an autoresponder, but that's like a one email autoresponder. There's actually autoresponders like the ones you mentioned, where you can schedule a calendar of emails, either by how many days to wait, how many hours to wait, or how many months to wait in between each email, or you can have specific dates. So you can actually have, hey, send this email on Valentine's Day, send this email on there, and you can add someone to your software, to your database, and and mark them to get those emails. And so you're not having to wake up every day and write those fresh. And that's a really powerful thing when you think about it, because you can take simple things in your business and automate them. For example, not to run away with the show or anything, but for example, one of the things when I had when I really got into automation, I had a martial arts school, and I automated my new customer, called it my new customer welcome sequence. So at my martial arts school, I had 6-month contracts and I had 1-year contracts. And so I already knew when someone bought that we would have to have 6 months to a year of communication. So they would go into an autoresponder where the first couple of weeks they would get more emails with tips and resources, and and try to overcome that buyer's remorse. And then, of course, at the end of the first month, I would send them a survey, say, hey, how's your experience been so far? All these things that I want to have everyone experience, but would take a lot of manpower to manage when you're talking about like having 100+ members, 150 students. You're trying to remember who's on day what, and oh geez, I got to follow up with that person. And so that's a big part. Those tools and the internet's just really changed things in a lot of ways for every business.
Yeah, well, look, and one of the key things I picked up on those comments is that there seems to be a lot of individuals that I've spoken with that seem to be stuck in this purely online environment. And we're talking about a martial arts organization which could be no further away from the online environment,
Correct.
or you would think, and you've somehow been able to rope them into the online environment based on the need for that ongoing communication, and that's a really powerful thing for people who are listening to understand that that's actually how you can use this in your business if you are that traditional brick and mortar type business.
You've got that right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Because a lot of people, that's actually in some ways it was a blessing, not a curse. Because I would get frustrated because I would see some people, and now that's part of why. And so hold on, let me say one thing at a time. I'm trying to say like four things at once. But you're right, because the brick and mortar, and it was a small town, and not only a small town, but especially with martial arts, like it's a
Yeah.
sub niche product. Because martial arts is a sub niche of sports, and then even
Yeah.
if you like say someone's interested in martial art, there's so many different styles of martial art. Who's interested in your style, and then even your
Mm.
style, who's actually interested in training right now? And so I was in a
Yeah.
small town of like 100,000 people, and so I had to really automate things in order to be able to be profitable and scale.
Mm.
Otherwise, you can't really afford to do that. And so, like you said, it's a brick and mortar business, but the online stuff still applies because a business is a business is a business, and systems like the marketing and sales and fulfillment systems are the same. The only thing that really changes is what people are delivering as like what problems they're solving. That's the difference. The pain
Yeah.
point customers are having and how they're solving that for them. But ultimately, the vast majority of businesses they fit into different models. There's different model types, and when you know them, it's just a structure and a framework to build.
There's just so much confusion for beginners out there, especially when they're hearing things like lead magnets and tripwires and core products, and it becomes overwhelming for a beginner. So, um, thinking about that in that sort of way, we talk about these high-end systems that can do all of these things, but if we go back a couple of steps, Daryl, and we start thinking about that beginner, with your expertise, would you start them off at something like an Infusionsoft, or would there be other options that could be, recommended for people just starting out in terms of autoresponders and having this sort of technology?
Right. That's a fabulous question, and I'm really glad you asked that. And, for a lot of people, it just kind of depends how committed they are. Are they interested or are they committed? Because if you're
Mm.
committed, then you can go get an expert tool. But just because you have an expert tool doesn't mean you know how to use it expertly. So
Mm.
that's where if you're just like kind of playing around and trying to figure out the kind of the where the walls and boundaries are at. There's a ton of free tools and even really cheap tools. You don't need to go get some high powered things, but obviously the high powered ones allow you to do a way more sophisticated stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just about staying in touch with people. I mean, Drayton Bird, who's a copywriter out of the UK, has a wonderful quote, and he said, "The goal in business is to locate a prospect and to turn them into a customer, and then to take that customer and turn them into a friend." And that
Yeah.
speaks to kind of direct response marketing where they say the money is in the list, and what they mean is the money's in the relationship with your clients, because if your
Yeah.
business lives and breathes off having a one-time sale with someone, I mean, that's like trying to find fulfillment romantically by having a string of one-night stands, where it really
Yeah.
is, right? Whereas
Yeah.
versus, I mean, everybody knows, it's like one of those common sense things that's not really common, where everybody knows that a business needs regulars to be sustainable, but no one's actively trying to create a method of creating regulars. They just, like I
Mm.
go to restaurants all the time. I go and I spend my money and I leave, and they have no idea who I am. They have no idea where I live. They have none of that. And if they're slow and they need customers, they're going to go and some sales rep's going to knock on their door and they're just going to spend money on whatever they pitch them because they know they should be doing marketing. But now they have an ad in some newspaper going to a geriatric center. You know what I mean? But they're like, that's not
Yeah.
even who they cater to. And so there's this huge mismatch, and they're not, that's again the database marketing component. They're not selling to the people that are actually in their restaurant and actually giving them money. And that's where they're just totally blind, missing this common sense fact that's not as common as it should be, that hey, if I just come in and I bring 10 people and we all spend $30, like find out who we are some way, at least find out what area we live in, so then when you go do marketing and get new customers, you know what I mean, it's a little bit more focused.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're talking about targeting your marketing, And when I start thinking about direct response marketing, obviously identifying who is, the triangle, the right market, the right message, and the right, you know,
medium. Yes.
match.
Yeah.
And I just had a gentleman's name come to mind, Dan Kennedy.
Yep.
Uh, and anybody in this game who knows anything about anything knows the godfather of direct response marketing. So I'm really interested in understanding a little bit about who you're following at the moment, Daryl. Who's having the most impact on your way of thinking?
That's a great question, and I need to think about that to answer it well, because I've got, like anything, we've all have had a lot of mentors, and I want to give credit to a lot of them. It's
Yeah,
tough to say though, to be honest, because right now, I don't know if I can or can't mention, but I also have a podcast where I'm interviewing a lot of self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners,
absolutely.
world-class experts, and so now, like that's why when you ask that question, if this had been a year ago or 2 years ago or something, it'd be clearer. But now
Yeah,
it's a little bit more vague because I'm learning from so many people. But I really
yeah.
do. I keep a list of my top. I call them my top 25 VIPs, and these are a list of mentors that I've had and people that I purposefully maintain contact with within every 21 days, because there's been
Yep.
research on that. You want to stay in touch with people every 21 days. I'm trying to stay in touch with these people because I really look up to them. So Jermaine Griggs is definitely one of them. He's easily my best friend. The guy is just a he is years ahead of the rest of the world as far as marketing automation goes. It's phenomenal. And for him, it's effortless because he's just got so many hours invested. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also a big fan of Ken McCarthy. You mentioned Dan Kennedy. Dan
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy he's not quite the godfather of direct response marketing, but he's the godfather of the education of direct response marketing, because
Yes. Yes.
he learned direct response marketing and he became the figurehead. Like that, like you said, he is a godfather of direct response
Yeah.
marketing
Yeah.
for sure, hands down. And he is so prolific and he's everywhere. Well, Ken McCarthy was his go-to guy for anything direct response that touched the internet.
Wow.
Ken had the very first. Ken was a direct response, like snail mail marketer, and he
Yep.
got on the internet really early. In fact, so early he did the very first seminar on how to market online, and it even had Mark Andreessen, the guy who created Netscape, the first internet browser. He presented and spoke at Ken's first workshop. Like this is like
Mm-hmm.
I think this is even maybe a little bit early, like earlier than 1990. It might have been like 89 or 88. So Ken
Go
was the
back.
first one to do that ever, and he has helped countless people generate an insane amount of money by applying
Mm.
direct response principles to the internet. And they've been ahead of everything.
Yeah.
Banner ads were invented at Ken's seminar. He's unfortunately kind of semi-retired. So,
Yep.
but Ken McCarthy, he's a great guy. Lloyd Irvin was a huge influence on me. Tyler Garnes was the VP of marketing at Infusionsoft for a number of years. I'm going to say 5 to 7 years, and he left about a year and a half to 2 years before Infusionsoft got $50 million of investment capital from Goldman Sachs, and he helped them scale their marketing budget from, I think he started with $500 to where's around 25 million a year. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what are some other names? I'm just trying to think. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones. Oh, Brian Kurtz is a big one. Brian was a VP at Boardroom.
Yep.
Boardroom, if anyone doesn't know that, Boardroom is one of the largest info publishers in the world. They've got newsletters and books and all that. Their customer database is around. I was at their office a year ago and for a conference, and we got to do a tour of the office, and I snuck away and I started actually like interviewing the staff and talking to the staff, and I was asking about their customer list, not prospect, not lead list, their customer list. And one person
Actual
quoted
custom.
me 7 million names, another person quoted me 12 million names, and the other person quoted me 9 million names. So we're somewhere around 7 to 12 million
Seven and a
customers.
half. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. Like I don't think that company's done less than 40 million a year in like the last 20 years. So um,
That's incredible.
yeah,
That's incredible.
so they've definitely been my mentors. But Dan Kennedy's been a huge influence from a distance. Gary Halbert, Gary Bensavenga. I know I'm forgetting and missing people, but
What about Rich Sheffrin?
to be honest, I've come across some of his stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I've a lot of my friends speak highly of him, but I'm not very familiar with any of his stuff. And I
And
know.
nor am I. Nor am I, to be quite frank. And that's an interesting thing. I see a lot of. I look at a lot of material, and I make sure that I'm, I guess, at the sharp or the pointy end of things. And it doesn't really grab me. I don't know what the general gist is of why that is the case, but there are certainly other far more compelling, I guess, leaders, for lack of better ways to term it.
Yeah,
Um,
perhaps. Now, I think
yeah.
Todd Brown was worked with Rich for a number of years, and I know Todd's stuff pretty. No, I wouldn't say very intimately, but I know Todd, and I have a ton of respect for Todd, and I'm pretty sure he was Rich's marketing director for a number of years. So,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
again, a lot of the circles overlap, but I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff it's the same historic principles, just applied over
Mhm.
and over in different fashions.
Yeah, from what I understand, what I feel is that there's this, uh, it's almost akin to a mirage for some people that are not in the right mindset. For those who are not strategic minded, the marketer will come at you with this almost mirage like offer of, hey, you can do this, and it's three quick steps to success. And one of the things we try to do at My Future Business is to dispel the myth that it's going to be a push button solution, because we're about providing real solutions for lifestyle driven entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of that going on. What's your take on that sort of thing?
Yeah, I fully understand that. So all of us, we're always looking for shortcuts, and it's not even so much that we want the magic pill, but a big part of it, I think, is people want we're always trying to do things better, right? We don't want to waste time and energy. Like humans, we're scarcity minded. We don't talk about the abundance of clean air. We talk about how scarce clean air is because of how much smog is imposing on us. Like, so we're very scarcity minded because scarcity equals death. So we're constantly
Right.
looking for ways to improve things and to simplify things. And marketers do that. And it's a bit of a catch 22 because you have to entice people and you have to get their attention and you have to get them involved and going. You know what I mean? Like, I know, especially in martial arts, we called it proof of learning. And in someone's first 30 to 90 days at our school, it was really important. We taught them very basic, easy things that if they applied, they would see some sort of results. They might not be phenomenal results, but they had to build that confidence because once they had the confidence and they saw that they were capable of doing this and getting progress, then they would, then all of a sudden, if they had a failure because they were trying something harder, it wouldn't crush them. But in the beginning, if they get crushed by something or they fail, a lot of people will just give up. So it's a bit of a
Yeah.
catch 22 where you can be too hypey because you're just trying to get attention. And some people, they take that and they just sell garbage. And some people, and like, I want to, like, in any industry, there's always a mixed bag, right? Good people,
Yeah.
medium, right? But some
Yep.
people, like the only reason why they manage to stay quote unquote gurus is because their entire business model is based off their friends promoting them, and that's how some of these, I'm going to say some, not a lot, because there's some great guys
No.
out there, but some of them, that's
Yep.
how they succeed. They have a network of friends, and they all promote each other, and then the
Hmm.
people, the end user, they buy, like you said, this three quick tips to clicking two buttons and having a business, but no one's having success with it. But no one can really complain or anything because all the other gurus are saying that it's a great product, so people think it's them. So I think that's kind of the good and the ugly of it. If
Yeah, well, I certainly I get that, and because I see the fine line that's walked between, building the desire through appropriate messages aimed at the right people at the right time with the right media, but then you see, I guess, the other side, and one of the things that I actively pursue is this. I'm not sure realistic is the best word for it, but an understanding or a clarity behind the fact that there will be some work involved if you're going to transition your, let's say, traditional bricks and mortar business to an online environment or parts of both. There's no push button solution. There's going to be some work involved. So that really brings me back to what's happening with you right now. Are you doing lots of work with clients? Are you involved with projects? What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you asking that. Right now, what I'm really focused on is I've actually just fired a bunch of my clients, and not because of them in any way, shape, or form, but really because I'm trying to get more time and attention to focus on my own things. So, like I mentioned, have the podcast, and the goal is to help create 200 new multimillionaire business owners who solve world problems with entrepreneurship. And when I say that, people are like, "How are you going to create 200 new multimillionaires?" And I go, "Well, because people do better when they know better. So that's why I'm interviewing people who are, because I'm not going to try and say I have all the answers. I have some answers, and I've proven
Yeah.
myself in different arenas, but I have failures as well, and no one's perfect. So I want to get as many people who have been down the road of success and get them to just spill their guts and tell us what to do, and and then
Yeah.
provide coaching and training around that. So that's really what I'm focused on now is just getting the podcast out there. We've got a monthly program called Best Business Monthly, where we're trying to help with business owners, get them focused and get them working on their business, not just in their business, on a weekly basis, and then
Yeah.
taking some of the most valuable things that we've learned from our experts and creating courses around them. So that's really where my focus is at now. I still
Mhm.
work with clients, but it's kind of a catch 22 because some of the stuff that we do, like when you build some of the, like here's an example: the martial arts school I had was been closed now for a number of years, but I still get leads. Like I still have people trickling in, and the autoresponders are still running. Like some of the, like you know
Yeah.
what I mean. And I've shut
Yeah.
certain things off, but I still get emails from people like, "Hey, when can I come in and drop in for a class?" And it's funny because I tried to
Yeah.
sell it to a competitor. I was like, "Look, man, you really need to get this system," and he didn't understand it. He was like, "Ah, no," like he didn't see any value. But it's been
Now,
years, and
there's a two-step solution if there ever was one.
I know. Well, and it's funny because I've joked with some of my friends about how, like they've paid off, like they've paid for their website, like their hosting and all that, and they've paid for their autoresponders, and like all this stuff is kind of paid up in advance. So they're like, I could disappear for 5 years, and I could be dead, and no one would really know because my family wouldn't know how to shut anything off. Like family wouldn't know how to take down the website and how to change the email. Like they wouldn't know how to do that, so people would still be signing up and like getting emails and thinking this person exists. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So everybody comes from somewhere, and we touched on that a little bit. We've all made mistakes, and we all have a life, and we create a trail, we blaze the trail, as it were. What was the first thing that you got into when you found the online environment? What you dip your toes into first off?
Oh, that's a great question. So in the beginning, it was about beating my competitors because it was a local market. So it was about beating them and getting the new prospects, getting the new leads.
Yep.
So it was
Yep.
about search engine marketing and online marketing and just being where people are looking for you. And that
Yep.
was a combination of just generating a ton of free content, just a ton of free content, and then and organizing it. Because the other thing that people don't get is the internet is an index, right? That's what a search engine is. That's why Google won because they were the best index. That's what they were. They were the
Yep.
best, cleanest index because when you want to search for something, you don't want to get garbage. So you have
No.
to. That's where keyword research and tags and meta tag and like all this other stuff. It's all just trying to tell a computer who you are and like what you look like and what you're about. And so
Hmm.
it was just putting out a ton of free content in multimedia, which means that we would put up blog posts, we would be interviewed by other people or blog on other people's pages, we would do videos, we would upload images. The goal was that anytime someone wanted to look for something in our local arena, we had so much content out that we would come up no matter what they were
Yep.
searching for. And that's
Yep.
actually a really powerful strategy as far as like being everywhere,
Hmm.
because your own website can only really show up in one place on the search engine, right? Google won't let you take over a whole page. But
Yep.
this is like an old strategy. It still works to a certain extent, but like if you
Hmm.
can get on Bloomberg, like this, of course these are crazy examples, right? But if you can get on like a university website and on Bloomberg and and WordPress.com, the core site, puts something for you up, and you have your own website, and someone searches your name or your keywords, all those are going to show up, and they will push your competitors off the page because their sites have greater authority and relevance and all that. So
Yes.
in the beginning, that's what it was. It was a lot of that. It was learning about how to work with the index and how to get out there and how does the internet work, and realizing
Hmm.
that wow, you can put something out there and it will sit there almost like evergreen, we call it. It'll just sit there
Yeah.
almost eternally, and people can find that, and it'll lead them back to me in one way, shape, or form.
Yep, yep. So you talk about automation, and I suddenly start to think about, as soon as you said evergreen, I had in mind evergreen business systems and those types of automated webinars. What do you think about those types of approaches? Do they have their place?
Oh, totally. And in fact, this goes to back to one of the books that that I wrote. Actually, the one that did the best. And when we talked, I kind of talk about the history of direct response marketing. And this isn't based on any accurate data, but it's off of all the research I've done and learning I've done. I feel like this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of how it evolved. It sounds like this is
Yep.
where it came from, and that's where,
Uh-huh.
in back in the day, all anyone like a business owner was kind of a sales rep that had a horse and buggy that would go town to town, door to door, trying to sell his wares, right? You have to go meet people and sell them some stuff. And this is
Mm-hmm.
pre-post, this is before we had a post office system and all that stuff. So someone's going around knocking on doors and pulling into markets and giving presentations. And some ambitious sales rep, he's got a wife with a baby on the way or something. He needs to make more money somehow, and he's trying to figure out, how do I get through more doors in a day? And he realizes that every time he knocks on someone's door, he says the same thing. He goes through the same spiel. So he's like, you know what?
Yep.
Maybe if I wrote that down and I paid like a schoolboy or something to run ahead of me and deliver my letter, I could just show up and answer their questions, and I'll get through more doors faster. And so he starts doing that,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And he starts getting through. And then what he realizes is that, hey, some of these boys are coming back with money. People are just ready to buy without even meeting me. So then he adds an order form to the letter. And now his model changes to where he's pulling into a town and he's having these letters distributed by boys or girls or whoever, right? By children, or
Yep.
even not. Like, but you get the point. And now he's able to
Yeah.
reach more people, and his conversion rate is less. And this is a really important point. His conversion rate for sales is lower because it's not that face-to-face, kneecap-to-kneecap presentation, but it can scale
Mm-hmm.
unlike anything else they've done before. So now you just
Right.
asked about webinars. And a
Yep.
webinar is a presentation. It's a recorded, simulated live, can be simulated live presentation.
Yep.
So sales letters, video sales letters, webinars, teleseminars, these are all methods that you can use to literally can and clone your sales presentation so you can scale
Mm-hmm.
it, because one of the
Yep.
hardest problems for most businesses is scaling sales. That's
Yep.
training the
Yep.
sales force to sell, getting them to be
Yep.
consistent, right? And getting people to work, because people are dilatory, and we all that stuff. But yeah, so
Yeah.
to answer
Yeah.
your question, that is a great model and a great method to pursue to support
Yep.
whatever else you're doing.
Because I come back to full circle on other things, and copy to me is obviously very, very important, as it should be, um, in many respects, be it in video format or long form sales letters, and then you start to think about this whole construction of your automated webinar, and you think, how important is copy in
Mm.
your world? And how have you gone about the process of understanding the process of copy and doing it? Do you do it yourself? Do you outsource it? What do you think about copy in the big scheme of things?
Well, copy is super important now, but something that unfortunately that's a dismay to a lot of copywriters is copy is it is very important, but it's not the most important thing. What is the most important thing is the list. Because the list, if you have great copy, and copy is your sales presentation. So if I have the best sales presentation for my gourmet food, but I'm delivering
Yep.
it to people who are leaving a restaurant and they just finished eating, the copy doesn't matter. Like, they'll be like, "Wow, that's great," but I'm so full, man. Like, nah, right? So that's
Yeah.
like the key thing, and but the real benefit of copy is to write copy, you have to understand who you're writing to have an impact. So it's
Hmm.
actually the process you go through in copywriting that's the real value, not the copywriting itself. You meant asked about my mentors. One of my mentors was Glenn Livingston. He's a very, very, very brilliant man. Comes from a
Yep.
family of like 17 psychologists and psycho and like therapists, and talk
Yep.
about understanding psychology. And he's sold over $20 million in consulting to the Fortune 500 to go in and help them launch new product lines and all the big names that that you've heard of
Hmm.
that are in our houses. And for him, he doesn't write copy, he
Mm.
assembles it, and not in the sense of like how we're told about that, because some people say that they don't write copy, they assemble it by taking pieces. You write a whole bunch of stuff and you take the best, and you organize it, like you work it like a sculpture. But Glenn means in the
Yep.
sense of he assembles it because he surveys the snot out of his client base, And then he's got some methods
Yep.
that he uses to determine what's a valid response versus an invalid response, because a lot of times people don't know what they want. And then he
Yep.
assembles their answers into a structure that he then goes and uses as copy. So for me, it's hard to do
That's a really great.
but
Sorry, that's a really great response, because I think a lot of people don't really understand the crux behind creating appropriate, I guess is the best word for it, appropriate copy for the right market, for the right target audience. And this use of surveys, just a piece of gold for listeners to take away. And I guess it flows on to the next question, Daryl, if you don't mind.
sure.
And that's about where would you, how do you put together a survey that they can use? And is it something that you do on a cold list, or do you do it to existing customers or prospects? What's the process behind that part of it?
Well, so now we're getting into kind of some market research stuff. And part of that is because you can't use the same survey results on everybody. So, for example, let's say I make emergency blankets.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go to Haiti right after the earthquake and sell a ton of them, and then I could go and sell them to climbers and like outdoorsy people that want to take them, to sleep with and to have, because they're
Yeah.
outdoor camping. So my
Yep.
survey answers from the people in Haiti isn't going to help me sell this to the hikers and backpackers as well.
No.
So again,
No.
it comes down to the steps you go through with copy. So to answer your question, I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the internet for different questions answered, but the reality is just like learn the people you're trying to help. And some people, I think, where they get
Yeah.
caught up is they're in a business model that doesn't lend itself to scaling. And now more than ever, we are in a global economy. I mean, I can
Yeah.
FaceTime my friends in Japan, and I'm talking to people in Tokyo in real time over video. Like that's right now. You're in Australia, I'm in Canada. We are in a global economy,
Yes.
and you might be a local business, but depending on what you do, and that's again because if you're local, the numbers can be really small, and it can be hard to it can be hard to validate why you should segment things and blah 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 blah. But
Mm.
it's just understanding the people. It's just understanding why they like. Gary Bensavenga said problems are markets. It's not an age group, it's not a demographic, it's not a psychographic, it's a problem. Problems are
Mm.
markets. I'm hungry, I'm bored, I'm
Yeah.
lonely. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like
Yeah.
all these. That's what it is. So when you ask about the surveying, that you have to find people having a certain problem, find out why it's a problem. How long has it been a problem? What are the consequences of the problem? And what does the solution mean for them? And what will it do
Mm.
for them? And when you understand these things, I mean, this is from Glenn Livingston, but he was saying that he entered 17 markets profitably all at once. And he said he would never enter a market until he felt changed from his research about them, like until he
Mm.
felt empathetic, like felt empathy for the
Yeah.
people he was trying to serve because he understood them so well.
He walked, a mile in their shoes, so to speak.
Right. Because when you know that, now you understand the terms of the business. And one of my guests, Brad Martineau, he has a great quote. Hold on. You are definition. Sorry, I'm looking this up because he has this great quote. He
Ah,
says, when you look up the word entrepreneur in the dictionary, it
mm-hmm.
says a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It does not say a person who answers phones, mops floors, and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
does the
Yeah.
sales,
Yeah.
fulfills on the product, does the copywriting, does the graphic. That's not it. A person who organizes and operates a business or businesses. So now we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
understanding a group of people who need help and organizing people to help them
Yeah. Yeah.
and setting it up in a structured way that doesn't depend on you. Because if we want to talk about Robert Kiyosaki, the difference between being self-employed and a business owner is self-employed, you literally just have a job, whereas a business owner, you've like created something like a community, like an asset, like a transferable thing, like a car that isn't
Yep.
dependent on you, that solves a problem for a certain group of people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's again coming, I think, back to it. So
Yeah.
obviously this speaks to, and not, we're painting in broad strokes. So I would like to caveat this, because I'm not, this, someone's going to write back and be like, well, that doesn't apply to X, Y, Z. Okay, but generally this applies to everything, and that's the goal. So you want to
No, well, yeah, we're just trying to lay it out on the table for the listeners, and you're really giving us some insight, and especially for the beginner and the intermediates, they'll just be lapping this up. So we really appreciate it.
of course.
I want to circle back more towards you. I want to touch on, if we can, Daryl, when you were first, early days, back when you had long hair, all the rest of it, when you were trying to identify what it was that, people used to use the word strength. I wish I had a better way to ask the question, but did it ever occur to you that you had to look for what your strength was when you were starting out, as well as your passion? Or did they both come naturally to you?
No, I think a lot of people, you just have to find your way. We're kind of lost, and we don't really know what we want or what we like or don't do. And that's part of the beauty of life, is the journey of discovering that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So no, I didn't, and I did a bunch of different things and trying to figure out. The one blessing that I have, I think, is I did a program called Katimovic when I was 17, which was it used to be a federally funded program for youth in Canada. Now it's no longer federally funded, but it still exists. And they would put together a group of boys and girls, and it would be around 10 people, and it would be half guys, half girls, and it was meant to represent Canada. So there'd be there was like 3 people from Ontario, because statistically most people are from Ontario. We had a few French people, we had a bilingual person, we even had an Inuit guy, Kenny, from Arctic Bay, Baffin Island, the northernmost village of Canada. He didn't even speak English. All he spoke was Inuktitut when he came down. And for 9 months we lived together, and we spent 3 months in a different province each, and we had full-time volunteer jobs, and every night we volunteered in the community, and that gave
Yep.
me a ton of experience, life experience.
Wow.
I
Wow.
did so many different tasks during that time. I did a parade, I did a soup kitchen, I did like all
Yep.
these different things. So it gave me a wide spectrum, so I got to figure out what I did like and what I didn't like. But you know what, Rick, I still didn't really know what I wanted. I knew some
Mm.
of the stuff I didn't like, and I didn't really know what I wanted. So I actually thought about doing a course on this, on helping people find their passion, but I never took it
Oh,
on.
look,
I
I
put some.
think it'd be a great opportunity.
But here's an activity for the listeners. If you feel that you're trying to figure out what that passion is, I
Mhm.
sat down one day with a paper and a pen, and I made a timeline of my life. And I just tried, I went forwards and backwards as best I could, and I just put down on it all the milestones and highlights and things, and like phases that I could remember. It's not going to be perfect, but I gave myself a good chunk of time, and I sat down and did that. And then I tried to draw a line to connect the dots between the commonalities. And one of the things that I
Yep.
really noticed is my entire life I've been teaching, I've been coaching, I've been mentoring, from when I was babysitting. When I was a kid, when I was just finally old enough to babysit, and I got babysitting some neighborhood kids in that. I've always kind of been in that role, and that's where I realized, oh, I kind of seem to draw to that, and so that's probably a really good bet for someone, to try and just look back and think of the highlights and draw a line if they can. And if that doesn't work, Denzel Washington has this great quote, and I'm not gonna remember it properly, but he talks about, and I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual, and he just says that itch that you have, that thing that you have inside you that you feel like you want to do and express, that's God's
Mhm.
proof to you that that's your purpose in life, and you just need to go out and claim it. And so a lot of
Yeah.
people don't, because they're just afraid. Oh, but I got to make money, and what happens if I don't have this job? But nature abhors a vacuum, and so if you let go, if your hands are full, you can't accept anything.
Mm,
So
mm.
it's part, like, so
Wow.
that's the fear of letting go of stuff, and so
That's
that
really
prevents
tough.
people. Yeah.
That's great feedback. I feel like I'm in a wind tunnel here, getting blown away by all of this great feedback. It's just amazing. I, I often like to talk about the motivations, the daily motivations, the short term motivations, the long term visions and strategies. And really, right now, I want to know: do you ever wake up of a morning and say to yourself, "I'm not motivated today"?
Hmm.
Does that is that a worldwide trait of human beings, or is that isolated to those with a mindset that's not not becoming of leaders in their field, or tell us a bit about that? Do you have those days?
Sure. Oh, of course, of course. Everyone has those days, and it's totally natural. So some days I very much don't feel like doing anything, and I have. It's one thing that's funny because you mentioned it. Some days I have days where I feel great, and I'm like, and I finish the day, and I'm like, wow, today was such a great day, and then I look back at like what I accomplished. I'm like, I didn't really do anything today, did I? And then I have other days where I'm like, today was a terrible day. I was so, and I'm like stressed out. It was terrible. And then I look and I'm like, man, it was a great day. So I realize that how I feel about things has very little impact on how things actually went. So, and that comes
Yeah.
back to going about the survey, and you have to be careful about the answers because people don't necessarily know. They know what they think, don't necessarily know the
Yeah.
real answer. So, to answer your question, though, I've had a mantra for, geez, I would say probably almost 10 years now, and it hasn't really changed much. It went from I will to I am, but I am living a long, happy, healthy, joyful, and wealthy life. And that's really my goal, is I want to live a long, happy, healthy, joyful, and wealthy life. And another thing that's kind of led me to is you there's no days off on that. Like when you have a goal for how you want to live your life, there's no weekend. And when you look outside
Yeah.
and you see the birds and the squirrels, like we're all animals, okay? Sure, we might be in God's image, or we're sentient, and that's great, but we're still animals. We're still flesh and blood, and have same
Yeah.
organs and that. So they don't take any days off, and they do okay. Squirrel's not like, you know what? I'm tired. I've been searching so hard for food this week. If any predators come around, I'm gonna tell them to come bug me on Monday. Like that just doesn't happen. But humans,
Doesn't happen.
we are out like we are out of the food chain. Like people, that's incredible. For every other creature on this planet, life ends with screaming and something eating your stomach, like while you're alive,
Yes.
right? So
It's pretty confronting.
right. So we've got, since we don't have that, since we don't have like a tiger breathing down our neck, we have like these lazy days. So I don't believe in days off. Is another part
No.
of it. And I saw this
Yeah.
movie
Yeah.
called Groundhog Day a while ago. That it was
Oh
this
yes.
guy. You know it?
Is that Bill Murray?
Yes, Bill Murray. He, for
Yes.
whatever reason, he just wakes up one day and he's stuck in
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Yeah, and he just keeps
Yeah.
having the same day over and over and over again. And so he starts optimizing his day almost, right? So
Yeah.
I thought about what would my ideal day be. So just talking about motivation, thought about what would be if I only could live one day every day of my life, what would that day look like? And I kind of wrote it out, and and I had how I want to wake up and how I want to spend my morning and how the rest of my day, and I just try to do that, and that's like I just try to stick to that, and so that's part of it. And the motivation part, in some places, it might be because people are doing something they don't care about, or they're not, you know what I mean? That's
Uh,
not tied to them,
yeah.
and that's. But I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
you have to push through it. Some days you don't feel like going to the gym, but you always feel great after you've done it. So routine and
Yeah.
habits are quintessential to success, and surrounding yourself with other people, that's actually a huge one. Being in a
Mm.
group of people who are going to push you. If you hang out with nine crackheads and and you're not a
Yeah.
crackhead, but you're going to feel good about yourself because of how accomplished you are for them, but they're not going to motivate you to be any better.
Is that a bit like the best house on the worst street?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
Yeah.
worst thing you want to do is be the smartest person in the room because it's going to be, I mean, you learn through teaching in that, but you learn a lot more when you're a student and you're
Yeah.
applying hands on. So, um,
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
are you more into your day in the AM or the PM? Are you an early riser or a late starter?
That's a great question. I've been both in my life, and I don't know, I don't know which I am because I can sit up and work until 3 a.m. no problem and love the
Mm.
fact that the world's gone quiet around me and I'm undisturbed and able to focus. So
It's beautiful.
I can do that, but I'm in a really good. I'm probably like I don't know, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So I'm around 9 months, 10 months into a routine where I'm up every day at like 5:30, 6 a.m. and I work out except for
Hmm.
weekends. So Monday to Friday, and it's just been awesome. But it means I go to bed earlier. So the last kind of 9 months or so, It's been that. But before that, I mean, when I had my client that I went to California with, and I helped them make $3.5 million with the 1.4 that was based exclusively on the funnel that I built for them, evenings and weekends. That stuff was all built like late night, like 10 to 2 a.m. So it's tough. It's tough to say. I don't know if I have a preference, but personally, I feel better, and I notice I am more productive if I'm up early and I start my day with breaking a sweat. Just hands down, there's just
Yeah.
nothing that gets your day going like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm on the cross trainer at probably 7 o'clock in the morning religiously.
Yep.
I'm right into hydration. I make sure I get as much water as I can get first thing.
Mm.
I try to cut the diuretics, so I don't drink soft drinks. And I think all of these things combined have a real impact on your ability to function with a level of clarity that would otherwise be absent.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yep.
so
But that's a
and I,
personal thing, and it depends on their life structure as well. So someone listening to this call, if they have kids and stuff, and like maybe they can't have a morning like that. So maybe for them, the nighttime is perfect after the kids have gone to bed. So,
yeah,
I mean, ultimately, we're humans, and the cool thing about being human is that we can be anything. If you want to be a morning person, be a morning person. If you want to be a night owl and make your millions, working burning the midnight oil, do that. Because the difference between us and a lot of animals is when you see a dog, the dog will only ever be a dog, and it will only ever do the handful of things that dogs do. But as a human, I can decide I want to take up skydiving, and tomorrow I now become a skydiver. I decide I
yeah.
want to take up golf, and now I become a golfer. And so, exact same thing. And consistency, commitment, consistency, dedication, discipline, deadlines. Like those handful of things will get you where you need to go, and just really make sure you're surrounded by. That's a huge thing. If you are not in an environment where you're being challenged or pushed, and honestly, sometimes your enemies are the best motivation because they just keep you moving forward, right? And they don't
Yeah.
let you rest. But you need that because nothing fails like success. When you get that fat cat, you don't have to try that hard. Like that's the beginning of the downfall. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that just rings so many bells, I'm sure, for our listeners, and that's just fantastic. When we think about, you know, all of the, I guess, the darker times that we have in our lives from being an entrepreneur, what do you think in your, let's call it a career, for lack of better ways to term it, the hardest thing that you've had to face in your business that ultimately ended up being the most enlightening for you? What was the hardest thing?
I think business is very Shakespearean because in all
Mm,
of Shakespeare's works, the people fell victim to their flaws.
hmm.
So I think it's the same thing. So for myself, I've done a number of different aptitude tests and a couple that are very well reputed I
Briggs
just
Myers and
Briggs Myers, and I forget what some of the other ones. There's one called a Trimetrics, and it's 68% accurate, based on like how you compare to the U.S. population. And that one specifically, I scored extremely high in a lot of areas, sometimes double over the average person, which is great. But for me, a big weakness is organization and teamwork. Um,
right.
and so, in some ways, that's been it because we talk about the challenges, and that I notice that I am in a lot of ways the bottleneck. I'm the bottleneck and I'm the problem because I try to do everything myself. And I had a mentor. Set a goal one year to meet 9 millionaires because
Yep.
guru was like, if you want to be broke, hang with 9 broke people. I was like, forget that. I want to be rich. I'm going to be 9 million, and I did. And one
Yeah,
guy he
yeah.
told me, Daryl, everyone's going to be a beta version of you no matter what. You're just going to have to accept that, and you have to build your life and your business around that, and just live with it. And that's been huge. Being able to get more people. All the big successes I've had have been when I've teamed up with people and I've been part of the team versus trying to go do the lone wolf thing. Um,
So this is I guess where the coming in from the side about the whole need for mentoring, and this is partly to do with that exposure in high end mentoring groups. Is for you, is mentoring something that you can, for the sake of our readership and listeners, something that you can do online through like an inner circle, or is this something that people need to get off their backside, get in their car, get in a plane, or whatever they need to do, and meet, bums to the bar, so to speak?
hmm.
What's the better approach with that?
Um, I think it's a bit of both because right now the way the world works, so I mentioned Jermaine Griggs, and he's had a huge impact on my life. I had a ton of knowledge, but I wasn't able to generate, and it's not my first million. I wish. I'm working on my personal first million, but for my client,
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
million I made them, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done it without some of the insights he gave me that really helped connect the dots. And that was done. Most of that exchange was done just through Facebook messaging. I met him
Wow.
in person once, reached out to him because I was going to a conference and he was going to be speaking at the conference, and we just hit it off and we became friends. And for like a year and a half, 2 years, our entire life was online. In fact, I lived, like I mentioned before, I had the martial arts school. I was in such a
Hmm.
small town. I didn't really feel this town is very much like a government town, an institutional town. So there's not really a lot of support for entrepreneurs
Hmm.
in that sense. So honestly, in some ways, I became antisocial. No, I wouldn't say antisocial, but I just didn't like. I didn't see purpose in going in because the whole thing, who you are, the type of people you surround yourself with. So I would just volunteer. Like I would volunteer. I would get paid to do coaching and consulting with people, or I would get paid to do stuff for them. I literally
Yeah.
just filled my life with being in this. Like this interview we're doing now. Like I
Yeah.
would try to sit and soak in these types of conversations as much as I could, whether they're in person, whether it's in text online, whether it's a phone call. I just
Mhm.
wanted that, like almost like a muscle. Like, if you do
Yeah.
every morning you wake up and you do push-ups until you collapse, and you wake up and you do push-ups until you collapse, and your goal is to be able to do 200 push-ups in a row. If you keep that up, you will get there, right? You'll have
Yeah.
injuries, you'll whatever, but that was the goal. Was I'm like, I am going to make it. I'm committed to this. And I just went, and I've paid for coaching, and I've gotten free coaching, and I've put together coaching groups, and it was it's tough to say. That's all I'm going to
Yeah.
say. Is I've had ones that were like free, that were
Hmm.
phenomenal. I've had ones that paid were way better than any of the free ones were, and I've had ones that I paid for that I'm like, yeah, the one I'm paying a little bit less for is actually better. So,
Yeah.
but you
Just
can't, but
forces, isn't it?
you can't be afraid to try, and you have to
No.
keep going. And here's the other thing that's really been surprising is that often you only really need like the whole 80/20 principle. Like you only really need one or two ideas. One or two ideas. You could be in a coaching program, like a mastermind program, and you could be paying the 1,000 or whatever they're charging, the exorbitant amount of money you think that you're paying for that. And you sit in there for 4 months, you're like, this is just a waste of my money, blah, blah, blah. And then the fifth month comes around and you get some
In
sort of
vain.
breakthrough, and then you make $50,000 every year more because of that. And
Yeah.
you just, it's like you can't predict the future. It's all hindsight. So you just have to move with fear through things and just be smart about managing your finances, and you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
just stick to the
Absolutely.
principles. You just got to stick with the
Every-
principles and go. And it's not always going to work, but they're principles for a reason, and you just stick with them.
For a reason. I mean, this is just like a wind tunnel of education for our listeners. And Daryl, you're an inspiration. And I guess, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I just feel that there's certainly a synergy in terms of what we're interested in. And it's just been a fantastic 45 minutes or so talking with you. But I really want to get to the point where we close out on two final things, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And the one of them is that if you had to start from a fresh slate, what would be the one thing that you would do differently?
Now, how fresh are we talking? Like a fresh, like how fresh is fresh? Like I'm
When we're saying, let's just use a reference point of your first major client. If you had a first major client, what would be the one thing that you would have changed in terms of your customer experience with them, delivering customer service and things like that? Because
well,
we all have, not so great experiences. And, I certainly have a handful of things that I would have done differently.
yeah, yeah. I mean, part of it just comes down to just being authentic and sincere. What would I do differently? I I would try to avoid being distracted as much. I would probably have gotten a mentor sooner. I would
Yeah.
probably have been more adamant around, like even now, I told you I'm firing all my own clients. I'm firing all my own clients
Yes.
because I've been freelance doing what I've been doing for just over a year now, but
Hmm.
I've done more for my clients than I've done for myself. And in some
Right.
ways I'm like upset with myself about, not like in a bad way, but you know what I mean?
No,
Like
no.
it's like
Yeah,
if
I
I
do.
didn't cling to because it's easier to do work for other people than for yourself. So
Yes.
if I didn't cling to that, I would be miles ahead now. Like I would have my own seven figure. I really would. I would
Yes.
literally have my own seven figure automated funnel because I've done work for clients and I'm like they're on the path for theirs, and I'm like, geez, I did that for them, or and not necessarily. I don't want to say take all the credit, but I did that
No,
with
of
them.
course. Of
You know what I
course.
mean? In this time span,
Yeah.
it's like I've had two times, three times, four times that time, and I haven't done it for myself. So that's kind of part of it. I don't really know what the
Yeah.
answer is because, and forgive me, I know I'm verbose, but I in the beginning it was so good for me in my education to get involved in as many different projects. Like I had like time blocks, so this is when I work
Yep.
on my my business 9 to 5. But then evenings and weekends, I would get on the phone with you to help you with what you like. Whoever I meet you at a conference, you're having a problem, let's sit down and talk. Like I would fill that, and that's been so beneficial. But now I'm almost at the
Yeah.
point where I need to shut everyone out and just really focus on doing it for
So,
myself. And so that's when you
absolutely.
ask what would I do differently, I would try to be sharper in when that turning point came.
That's a great response. That is a fantastic response. And if I were a far more visionary individual, I would say I know where you're going to be in a couple of years' time, and it's going to be at the sharp, pointy bit of leadership and doing what you do because you're an inspiration. And just talking with you, I should be going to bed, but I don't think I'll be able to sleep for the next hour or so after this call because I'm pumped up. And that's really what this is all about: is pump people up to know, not believe, but to know inside themselves that they have the ability to be bigger and better than what they are today. And there is a future for them and their business if they want to get it bad
Yeah,
enough. So,
yeah.
look, Daryl, can I ask you one more thing, please?
Of course you can.
How can people.
Wouldn't you be shocked if I was like, no, we're sorry?
I would be. I'd be going, right, that's it, right?
No, 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 it's fine. No, no, of course, of course. I'm
No,
here to add
you've
value in
asked
the world.
55 questions. Look, how can people find you? I actually I saw your blog, your list of podcasts on iTunes, and it's prolific to say the least. Uh, and can we talk a little bit about how people can find more about you?
Sure. I mean, you can always look me up on Facebook, Daryl Urbanski, Urbanski. You can do that on any social media platform, and you'll find I've got a presence there. You can go to bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, both two places I
Right.
work out of, and
Okay.
that you can get on our list. We actually have a program called $1 Million Mondays, where if you sign up, it's free, and you sign up with your email and your cell phone number, and every Monday you get a text, and that text message is to help focus your thinking in your business for the week, and that's a free
Mm-hmm.
service that I offer. So
Great.
that's the bestbusinesscoach.ca, and of course you can listen to the podcast, which is the Best Business Podcast. Although I realize that everybody wants to have the best business something, so we're like buried in this huge list. So if you search my name, it'll probably come up, but you'll find it as well if you search that. But just
Excellent.
look online, reach out, and I encourage people to do that, whether it's me or even to you. Like if you listen to this and you're like, man, Rick is the coolest guy ever. I wish he was my friend. Start like just reach out. You'd be surprised. Some of the people
Yeah.
like I interviewed a guy on my podcast that has helped generate over a billion. That's with a B, $1 billion of sales because we reached out and asked like.
Yeah.
Like just people, they just don't get again the power of what you have in your fingertips. People don't realize that, years ago the best you could have, like if you had a problem, your only way to get an answer was your own experience in formal education, the
Mhm.
experiences in formal education of the people in your network around you that you could access, or the
Mhm.
library. And if it was a library, you had to go and pull out a book. You had to go find the
Yeah.
section. You have to pull out the 12 books that you think might have it and then go through them page by page. I can just look it up on my phone and have the answer in 2 seconds. I can go, hey, who's the world expert in blank? Get their
There it
name,
is.
look them up on social media, and send them a message and be like, hey, and you can get the world's expert, leading expert,
Yeah.
and answer your questions just by asking.
It's scary cool how much power there is at our fingertips. That little mouse button that goes click.
Yep.
It's underutilized.
Yep.
It's just a fantastic thing. But for everybody listening to this podcast, I will also be making these links available direct to Daryl's site so that you can fast track your way to Daryl and reach out to him as he's mentioned. Don't hound him. I'm sure he's very busy, but certainly reach out, say hello, and even let him know where you found him through. And I'll be sending out some follow-up emails with those links. So, Daryl Urbanski, truly a legend, a scholar. Thank you so much for your time. This has been the My Future Business podcast. And look, Daryl, let's talk again soon.
Yes, I would look forward to it. And thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve you and your listeners.
Thank you, Daryl.